What is going on, everyone? It is DylanLasagna here, the host of Very Cold Lasagna, and I want to make a quick correction. Actually, it's a future correction to my past self because, when I record these episodes, and I try to keep them the most up to date as possible, even when the unexpected happened. Well, the unexpected happened, and literally, as soon as I do season recaps of the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks, I think it was like a couple days before this stuff happens. Literally, the day the episode comes out, this stuff happens. So in this particular clip that you're about to see, the Denver Broncos got Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick, and they traded away to the Seattle Seahawks Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick, as you can see on the screen. So, holy crap. I will have my full thoughts on the next episode, what I think about this trade. I just wanted to make this correction, but holy hell, this is an insane trade. The Broncos finally got their quarterback, and I got to give props to George Payne and John Elway for finally going all in, seeing the quarterback signal shining bright on the mile high for however many years, ever since Payne Manning retired, and they finally got a quarterback. They went all in and got Russell Wilson, poached him out of Seattle, and pending though physical and Russell Wilson waiving his no trade clause. So those are 2 things that are still pending. But for the Denver Broncos, if both of those things come to pass, they got a quarterback. They got the quarterback that they want, especially considering that Aaron Rodgers is staying in Green Bay. So with that being said, let's get into the clip, and past me will look like an outdated motherfucker. I gotta say, what is it with the Denver Broncos, man? What is it with them ignoring the bat signal that is held up high on the mile high? There's literally a bat signal, and it's not the bat signal that is typically in the Batman movies. And, no spoilers, please. I haven't seen the new one yet. But there's a bat signal dedicated to them. It's a silhouette of a helmet with a specific decal that says Q and B. It's literally telling them that they need to do the following. Dear Denver Broncos, get a real quarterback, please and thank you. Sincerely, the Denver, Colorado. So, when you look at the Denver Broncos, ever since Super Bowl 50, they have been in shambles of mediocrity. They've had several starting quarterbacks, and they've had 3 head coaches that have pretty much all failed. They have all failed. So it's literally the definition of mediocrity. And going into year 3 of Vic Fangio's tenure as head coach, not much really expected, because on paper you've had not really exciting roster. They didn't really make any big splashes in free agency. They did make a notable move on defense in the draft with Patrick Surtain with the 9th overall pick. And for as talented as he is, I actually like Patrick Surtain as a player. But man, when you look at that pick for the Denver Broncos, for as much as I like the pick, some people didn't like it at all, because people felt that they should have gotten a quarterback. Justin Fields was still on the board. Mac Jones was also still on the board. So it's arguable that the Denver Broncos should have went for a quarterback, because they still, when you look at the rest of the team, they were still pretty talented. They were still on paper at the time a pretty solid team, but a team that has yet to reach its full potential. And going into free agency a month earlier, they were pretty much in-house. They kept Shelby Harris, the defensive tackle, safety Kareem Jackson. They also signed long-term Justin Simmons. They also picked up on the free agent market corners Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby. And then they made a trade for a quarterback, but not a great quarterback, and let alone a good one, Teddy Bridgewater from Carolina, and they even rid themselves of Joe Flacco in the process. So I guess the focus for the Denver Broncos and their new general manager, George Patton, however you pronounce his name, who was, brought in by John Elway, the new football operations president. The focus still remained defense for whatever reason. I mean, sure, you got a strong defense, but you got to complement that with a strong offense too. So you got to have a balanced attack for each football team. But the offense was still missing a quarterback that can take them to the next level. So for the Denver Broncos in 2021, it could have been either a total disaster or it could have just been meh. And the Broncos started 3-0. And you think that, this is good for Denver. This could be a good season for the Denver Broncos. They go 3-0. They make a solid run into the postseason. But when you look at the big picture, it was one of the least believable undefeated starts to the season behind Carolina. Because when you look at Carolina's undefeated season, not undefeated season, but undefeated 3-0, yeah, it was not great. They beat the terrible New York Giants. They also beat the Jets. They also beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. So very uninspired 3-0 start. And even in those 3-0 starts, Teddy Bridgewater didn't play particularly great. They had a strong defense, for that matter, but the offense was pretty mediocre with Teddy Bridgewater under center. And that became apparent once they started losing games, especially when they had their first loss against the Baltimore Ravens. Teddy Bridgewater was terrible before he left with the concussion, and Drew Lock was even worse in that game against Baltimore. And going forward, Teddy Bridgewater wouldn't just struggle with staying healthy, but he would struggle with consistency since that game. And you eventually have this like quarterback circus of Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. And Drew Lock would eventually take over for Teddy Bridgewater in December when Bridgewater got lost for the season with a head injury. So Drew Lock, man, he was a big time downgrade for the offense. He was overthrowing receivers, throwing a lot, and he turned over the ball more often than Teddy Bridgewater. And Vic Fangio just literally switched gears to the running game, even more so with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. And whoever was at quarterback overall, it was just suffering to watch that team on offense because the rest of the team was just bad aside from the running game. I mean, I guess to say a positive note first about Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, they were pretty good as a two-headed running attack. Melvin Gordon cutting through defensive lines, Javonte Williams explosive as a passer, not as a passer, as a receiving back and a running back. So for a rookie running back that was picked in, I think it was in the later rounds, Denver got a steal. in Javonte Williams. They were a good complementary attack, but when they were struggling, it was pretty evident that the offense completely felt flat. They were completely one-dimensional. And a passing attack with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Tim Patrick, they mostly couldn't produce, mainly due to the inefficiency of Bridgewater and Drew Lock. And especially with Sutton, he really couldn't do anything. He really couldn't produce with Jerry Jeudy back in the lineup since I think it was like week 8. So he really couldn't do much. So aside from the defense, they did pretty well. I say that's the biggest positive. That's the biggest positive of this team. And this was despite the Denver Broncos trading away Von Miller at the trade deadline. You had safeties, Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons, really good play limiting duo in the secondary. Patrick Surtain, he's a really good corner with his pass deflecting ability, and going forward has major upside. The pass rush, did take a little bit of a hit with the injuries to Bradley Chubb and KJ Hamler on the defensive end, but still a solid unit nonetheless. But overall, the Broncos, for as much playmakers as they had on both sides of the ball, they just simply fell short because the defensive injuries in the back half of the season, and just like in the 5 years since Peyton Manning retired, they had no reliable quarterback. They had no game-changing quarterback from really competing for a playoff spot and making at least winning a playoff game. They went 7-10, and another disappointing season for Denver. I will say though, they did get some nice victories over the Denver Broncos and the not the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos being the Denver Broncos. What kind of world are we living in? They did get some nice victories over the Dallas Cowboys and the LA Chargers. But then again, they're followed up by crappy performances over the Philadelphia Eagles and who did they play? Oh, the Kansas City Chiefs in the following games. So overall, not a good season for Denver again, but this is still a talented team if they get the right quarterback this offseason. So Vic Fangio fired after the season. He wasn't a terrible coach per se, but he just couldn't really get the team over the hump. And for whatever reason, he didn't give a say in wanting a quarterback. He didn't do anything to request change or make any adjustments on the team. So overall, Vic Fangio is not a completely terrible head coach, but he just didn't really do enough to get the team over the hump. So in comes the new regime in Nathaniel Hackett. He's the Packers' former offensive coordinator, who decently did well with Aaron Rodgers, but then when it came to net busting time in the playoffs, not so good. So when he comes over to Denver as a head coach, in 2022, a lot of it will have to will be wondered how much of the on-field product will be Nathaniel Hackett's play calling. How much of the success will be attributed to Nathaniel Hackett, especially when he was in Green Bay. How much it was Nathaniel Hackett, or how much was it Matt LaFleur? So Nathaniel Hackett has a lot to prove in 2022 in Denver in his first year as head coach. Or was it just Rodgers being a good QB in the regular season? Either way, time will tell. So going into the offseason, Denver actually has a lot of money to spend in this offseason. And some of their key free agents include Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan at corner, safety Kareem Jackson, linebackers Kenny Young and Micah Kaiser. Pretty much all the key free agents are at the defensive end, and if the deal is right, they can pretty much get them all back. Their current draft position is just like last year, at the 9th spot. The thing is though, should they go for quarterback at that spot? I think not. It's way too high in my opinion, but one of their team needs to address in the offseason has to be the quarterback position, because for them to get over the hump as this mediocre team in the NFL, they have to get a quarterback. They have a talented team on both sides of the ball. They have playmakers, but they don't have the quarterback. So they need to either get a big name via trade in free agency, because let's be honest with you, in the free agent market, there really ain't much when it comes to the quarterback position, and the draft class is pretty weak when it also comes to the quarterback position, unless you're willing to wait in the second round to find that name. But if you want to take a big swing, make an inquiry, try to go for Aaron Rodgers. Try to go all in on Aaron Rodgers. You have the draft capital. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I think Aaron Rodgers lives in Colorado, has a home in Colorado. So, the best of both worlds. It all depends on if Green Bay wants to trade him and if Aaron Rodgers wants to opt out. But if he doesn't, there's still may be an exodus of quarterbacks that the Broncos can pick from. Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Marcus Mariota, Mitch Trubisky. Everything below Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, I know it's not the best crop, But, the Broncos have to find something. They have to find at least a reliable starting quarterback. I know that's hard to find, but they got to get something. The next thing they have to do is, re-sign the defensive key pieces that I just mentioned and also add some depth. Again, they don't have a really exhaustive list of free agents, but, like I said before, they should use some of that money to perhaps re-sign them all if the price is right. They can also use a opponent pass rusher to keep their defensive unit strong. And who knows, they may be able to re-sign Von Miller back because the Rams can't certainly afford him back. So if they do have the opportunity to sign Von Miller back to the Broncos, hell, go for it. Definitely go for it. So overall, 2021 could have been better for Denver if they had a quarterback that could finally take them over the hump, bounce things out on the offensive side of the ball with that really good defense. But they just couldn't. They just really couldn't. And Vic Fangio was fired as a result, who wasn't bad per se, but he didn't really do enough to at least look for a change on offense. So we don't know what Nathaniel Hackett will offer in the Mile High, but we do know one thing. We do know one thing that they need to do in the offseason. They need to look at that bat signal. They need to look long and hard at that bat signal that's shining bright in the Mile High, whether it's day or night, that screams, "Dear Denver Broncos, get a real quarterback, please. Sincerely, Denver, Colorado citizens."